Welcome back. You're listening to the Starzology Astrology Podcast. I'm your host, Alison Price, and I'm here with my good friend and co-host, Arwynne O'Neill.
Hey, Alison.
Hey, and in this episode, we're going to be talking about Mercury retrograde.
Yes.
So Mercury is one of those planets that you may have heard of it retrograde, and certainly if you're an astrologer, you'll know all about this. But we're just going to have a little bit of a conversation now about Mercury in general, and then we'll look into this particular retrograde period that's coming up.
Yes, and it's interesting you would say as an astrologer, because Mercury retrograde is one of those things I've found that non-astrologers know very, very well. It's one of the few things that they know about. Mercury retrograde and Saturn returns are like the two things that non-astrologers have all heard of. Saturn return, they might just be like, what is that? That is such an astrology term. But Mercury retrograde, they actually probably know what it actually means, whether or not they believe it's a thing.
That's right. It's the way that astrologers are insinuating ourselves, is that word, into the general public.
Yes, the zeitgeist, as they say.
The zeitgeist.
Yeah. Here's a Mercury word for you, zeitgeist.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just have a quick look first at what does Mercury then represent in general?
Yes, well, as a triple Virgo, I am eminently qualified to pontificate on that.
There you go.
Mercury.
Use your big words now.
Yeah. Mercury rules Gemini and Virgo. Mm-hmm. So it's the communication planet. It is named after the messenger of the gods in Greek mythology. Mercury was the one with the little wings on his feet who ran around delivering messages and whatnot. Yeah, Mercury is about communication. It's about your communication style. So Mercury in your chart is how you communicate, how you speak, how you get your ideas across, and which is why in retrograde it becomes such an issue.
It's true. It's true.
And retrograde, let's just say, is obviously not an actual thing. It's a thing that happens from the perspective of the Earth. So we all know we live in a heliocentric solar system. However, as astrologers, especially Western astrologers, we look at things from the perspective of the Earth, and from the perspective of the Earth, Mercury has periods where it appears to move backwards in the zodiac. Yeah, it does this a few times a year, 3 to be specific, and at every few months, obviously, and it will last for about 3 weeks. And then there's something called a shadow period, which we may or may not go super into, but that's like the sign and the exact degrees of that sign where it's going to be retrograde. The 3 weeks before it does that is said to be the shadow phase. So those exact degrees, when it goes forward through them the first time before it goes retrograde, that is, I'm doing this thing with my hands, that 3 weeks is sort of a pre-retrograde shadow phase. So it kind of could be said to be like a 6-week period where there's a retrograde sort of ishness about the...
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So most of the planets do retrograde in their cycles, except the Sun and the Moon.
Right.
And also, I think that if Mercury is a prominent planet in your chart, if it's well placed, or it's actually your chart ruler or something like that, or your Sun ruler, then when Mercury's retrograde, it will affect you more than the average Joe. So there's that to be considered as well, even though we're saying, oh, Mercury's retrograde, not necessarily going to affect everybody in the same way, I think, as well.
And something interesting I've found about that in my personal observations is that Geminis that I've known seem to be especially sensitive to it. Virgos less so. But I have known an astonishing number of Geminis, a statistically significant number of Geminis, who seem very affected by Mercury retrograde, who seem to just know, like the full moon. They have a radar for it. They're like, it's Mercury retrograde, and sure enough, it is.
Well, this is it.
You can feel it.
These are people who've got their Sun in Gemini, and therefore Mercury's prominent for them in their chart. Whereas if it's perhaps you or me or whatever, it's not necessarily going to be the case. Where is your Mercury, by the way?
I mean, it's in Virgo.
Oh, so, is it? Okay.
Here's an interesting thing, though. I actually feel when Mercury is retrograde, it almost, to me, is like, it's kind of nice, because as a Virgo, I'm very much about editing everything and everything having to be perfect and being kind of a little bit anal about things. And I almost feel like when Mercury is retrograde, the whole world kind of enters a period where they're a little more like that, or should be. And it's almost like I can kind of relax a tiny bit more.
Okay.
Which is weird. But yeah.
Okay.
It's like, oh, everyone's a little more, anal right now about their dotting their I's and making sure there's commas and not,
the grammar police are out.
or whatever.
So is your Mercury direct or retrograde?
It is direct.
Sorry, I'm trying to... And another interesting thing about when Mercury is retrograde, it's basically every 4 months. So this particular time we're talking about August 2023, it's going to be retrograde in Virgo, and then previous to that it was retrograde in Taurus, and previous to that it was retrograde in Capricorn. So it tends to be in the same element for quite a while, for about a year and a half, and then it slowly shifts, and then the following Mercury retrograde periods next year is going to be Capricorn Sag, crossing the border, and then it's fully into Aries for the next one. So it's slowly shifting back through the elements. So that's interesting. So like for this particular year, we've got this combination, but last year was particularly Mercury was retrograde in Earth signs, triggering all of that.
Yeah. Interesting.
Okay, yeah. So we've had another look at your chart, and we see that you've actually got Mercury at 0 degrees Virgo, so that's fine. So what we're saying is Mercury is strong for you as well.
Absolutely. But this retrograde period won't be in the degree of my Mercury.
Okay, so when is this, what degree is this Mercury retrograde period going to be from?
Apparently 21 degrees.
Right.
Virgo. So, and it'll go back to 8 degrees.
That's right.
So it'll just be the mid degrees.
That's right. So it's about, 10, 13 degrees, it's backtracking. It's going to cross over, going forward, backtrack, and then cross over again.
Yeah.
So what were these dates again then, Arwynne? When is this going to start?
August 23rd is the beginning of it, and then it will it'll go back direct September 15th.
15th. So that's great. So that's going to be 3 weeks-ish, give or take a whisker.
Yeah.
It just depends how close we are to it and the sun and blah, blah, blah. So this is something that pops up 3 times a year. Yeah. So we're just interested this year. Why not Mercury Rules podcasting as well? So I'm going to lay that one down.
Yeah.
But also it's for ourselves. It's going to be crossing a couple of our planets as well. But let's just have a general chat about what can we anticipate when Mercury is going to be retrograde from August 23 to September 15.
Yeah, so generally, and this is something that most people who know anything about Mercury retrograde will have heard, that it challenges your communications. It can create miscommunications, misunderstandings, disruptions in communication channels. They always say, make sure to back up your data, make sure to double check that you've sent something when you think you sent it. Is it in your drafts folder? Did you send something without the attachment? This kind of stuff. Yeah. Always good to know anyway. Yeah. But Mercury retrograde, it's extra, make sure, blah, blah, blah. Make sure that you are booking travel meticulously, don't leave anything to chance, don't leave anything to the last minute. Make sure to kind of cross the I's, dot the T's, as they say. It can also be delays and setbacks, especially to do with travel or communications. And I think digital communications have their own sort of fraught whatever. But I mean, really, Mercury retrograde has been a thing for all history. And
that's right.
Back in the day, communication meant actual travel. It meant someone was on a boat or on horseback with a letter in their hands, Yes. So these are this is why delays, setbacks, this is all part and parcel with communication. Nowadays, communication is you tap something and it goes. Yeah. But still, there can be issues and snafus, as they say, glitches, mishaps with communication. So just make sure that if you are signing anything, if you are...
I'd say don't sign.
Yeah, I mean, they always say, don't accept a new job. Obviously, if you get a new job, probably a good idea.
It's a minefield.
But, really, if you can delay it a couple of days, if you can negotiate, drag it out a couple extra days. And also, Mercury retrograde, to say, using this energy in a positive way, is to go over these things more carefully. That's the way to use it in a positive way. It's just don't be afraid of it, and don't say, oh my God, I can't sign something until blah, blah, blah. I've got to put my life on hold. It's not about that. It's not about using this to rule your life and to be afraid. It's about being more aware.
Meticulous.
More meticulous, more careful, more Virgo, as they
more Virgo,
dare
exactly. Because Mercury's in its own sign, so it's going to be pretty strong also during this retrograde period. Yeah. And I know this is frequently popular with writers who want to review what was done before their writing and edit their stuff.
Oh, God, yeah. It's never ending.
It is a great time, I think, to go back over what has been done and revisit it. Yeah. Which sounds wonderful if you're a writer and you're editing, but if you perhaps you've had an argument with someone and you think you're done with that. As the Mercury retrogrades back, you're likely to revisit that argument, saying, I thought we made this decision. We spoke about this last week, and this is what tends to happen. So it's a matter of paying attention. And as you said earlier, that as Mercury's coming through the pre-shadow, things that are laying out then will be sometimes undone as Mercury goes backwards.
Right. Just scroll back and reread those texts and just make sure you said what you think you said. Send the email you think you sent with the attachment and the right attachment and all that stuff. Yeah.
So this period in the zodiac it's from 8 Virgo to 21 Virgo. If you happen to have planets in that, or your ascendant or what have you, in that section of the zodiac, then Mercury is going to give a 3-hit conjunction to those planets. And we actually do have a couple, don't we?
We do, indeed. Yeah.
So now, Arwynne, I see in your chart that you've actually got your moon is at 14 degrees Virgo.
Yeah.
This is going to be covered by the Mercury retrograde phase this year. So Mercury will go directly over across it. That will be sometime in early August. It will then retrograde back over it sometime towards the end of August, September. And then it'll do the third pass directly forward again. And this moon in Virgo is, well, representative of clearly your mother, and it's 10th house.
10th house, yeah.
We want to find a home at work, basically, or something in that way, or feel comfortable there, or re-sort out your office or something or other.
Yeah.
How do you see the moon actually expresses itself in general in the first place?
We've talked about this before, how the two of us are not lunar people, really.
No, I'm sorry.
No. I mean, some astrologers are very much focused on the moon. Where's the moon? You always know.
We're not so sure.
No, sometimes I look out the window, I see it's full, and I'm like, what? Wow, cool. Surprised.
So maybe there's going to be some further connection with your communications with your mom or something like that, or you're going to reach out and go back and...
We text each other morning, night, and day, every day.
Really?
So, I don't know how it could be more.
So that's super interesting. So Mercury's obviously going to bring in... Mercury often shows good news.
Yeah.
I want to say good news. I don't want to say Mercury's bringing bad news. Who wants to hear that?
Yeah.
But news will be coming your way, and conversations will be continuing.
Yeah.
And or anything else that you'd like to bring into fruition during that period.
Yeah.
And we can talk about it later, further on, to discover how these things actually did unfold for you.
Totally, and it's neat because another positive aspect of Mercury retrograde is that it allows you to think more about reflection and introspection. It's a favorable time to be more sort of analytical and as Virgo, and self-reflective. So it's a time to maybe review past decisions and kind of use that to spark new ways of doing things, and to sort of think about the past and sort of put a detailed sort of focus on past decisions and kind of reassess things. So that's a way of using the energy, as opposed to just being afraid, is my plane going to be delayed, blah, blah, blah. These things would ever happen. Yeah. But just kind of looking at ways you've done things in the past and casting sort of a critical eye or sort of a more detailed introspective eye on those things. Yeah.
Also, it occurs to me that it might have some value to perhaps do some journaling about how you're feeling those days as this comes through, to dig deeper into your subconscious in some way.
I have actually just started a dream journal. So.
Oh my Lord!
Yeah. Why not? Yeah.
Go you.
Other people do it, so I figured. It's so interesting too. You do it for 2 days, and all of a sudden, I'm remembering all my dreams. That's what they say too. It really doesn't take much.
Write it down.
A couple days of actually just thinking about it. The first thing you wake up, and then all of a sudden, all your dreams seem much more vivid, which is weird. Just the way the subconscious works.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's cool. I recommend it.
Okay.
I mean, it's not like my dreams mean anything more than other people's necessarily. They're just weird as everybody else's. But it's kind of neat.
Yeah, but journaling is actually the activity of Mercury. It's in Virgo, so that there might be some more details there.
Yeah.
And you might be able to reminisce and go down memory lane, and nostalgia is triggered when the moon is triggered. Yep. So you might be able to do remember when and things like that.
And come up with some new interesting thing from it.
Exactly. Yeah. Or reaching back into the past, perhaps to some woman who maybe helped you previously will step forward, or you'll hear from somebody like that. So that's a positive way, I think, of looking at this particular.
Yeah, because the moon it's the mother, but it's women.
Yeah, women and
and the 10th house. Yeah, obviously. Yeah.
Great.
for me.
And just, Arwynne, just for our listeners, so in my chart I have Mars at 13 Virgo and Venus at 16 Virgo. So what's actually going to happen is Mercury is going to do a triple hit pass to both Mars and Venus in Virgo in August.
Yeah.
Now, normally I use Mercury for planning and writing. I do quite a bit of journaling, and this is something I've started doing recently in the last, say, 3 or 4 years. I started with one journal, and it's actually grown. I've now got 7 journals, because clearly one is not enough, and you need one for each activity. So I've got my podcast
simultaneously?
journal. Oh yeah, I've got my podcast journal, I've got my art journal, I've got my crochet journal, and all my other stuff, and my grimoire, which is coming along nicely. But anyway, so
Venus in Virgo.
I know, right? So, and they've really got to look pretty, otherwise it makes me quite ill. But anyway,
yes.
So how I'm anticipating I'm going to be tapping into this energy is by actually planning out and strategizing, i.e. Mercury conjunct Mars, my actual astrology business from now to the end of the year, lay out all our podcast episodes, know what I'm doing there, look into the YouTube, look into the blog layout, and make sure I've got everything I need. If I'm going to present some more online workshops, I will do the wording for those, or at least the outlines, or the plan. We're going to make a plan, I think, as Mercury does a triple tap to that Mars. Because Mars in Virgo can be a bit of a workaholic, but not in a bad way, but I'm constantly busy, like a bit of a bee fiddling along, tinkering away with all this stuff.
I mean, I have to say, as a Virgo, I admire the hell out of that. And it's a bit overwhelming, because I only have Mars in Taurus, which is definitely not a workaholic. I'm a perfectionist, but definitely I wouldn't say a workaholic. I work hard, but it's more of a dogged, sort of stubborn, kind of workaholicness. 7 journals makes my head spin, and yours are very pretty and very well organized, and a Virgo dream.
It's like, I don't know why I didn't do it sooner in my life, because clearly, I mean, when I was, in my 20s or so, I kept a diary, but that was different, did this, did that. Now I'm using them to plan in colour.
Yes.
And I started with bullet journaling probably 3 years ago with Amanda Rachley, follow her channel. Right. And it was suddenly, I was discovered that you can do this in colour. Well, the sky's the limit. So I it's a way to organise my thoughts and my activities. Otherwise, what happens is I overdo it, and I'm sitting on the chair too long at the desk, or if I start doing crocheting, I can crochet like all Sunday, and then the next day I can't, my hand won't work.
Yeah.
So I try to, it's not Pomodoro things, but to give, say, from 10 to 12 I'm going to be doing this, and then I'm going to get up and I will go out and I will do these things. So I like to plan the activities. Otherwise, I just go off the deep end. And then considering the Mercury doing the triple tap to the Venus, I'm not quite sure that. I think I might be more in communication with my sister.
Yeah.
Not that we're not necessarily in communication, but I think I'd like to set up a more frequent connection with her, maybe once a week, because she still lives in Johannesburg, and the time zone itself is quite challenging. Rather than just ad hoc communications, it would be nice to keep up with the day-to-day and what's happening and stuff like that. Or, I don't know,
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Mercury sort of rules siblings and obviously
it's
communication
third house,
third house, exactly. And super important to plan those things when there are built-in sort of difficulties, like time zones. I mean, 12, 13-hour difference or whatever it is. Yeah, exactly. You can't just let those things slide.
Which I did for many years, but I'm trying to keep in touch with everybody, and maybe even my daughters too, but so, or another way would probably to if I tap into the Venus, the art side of Venus, then I definitely am going to be attacking. I've got an acrylic painting that I've got in my mind. I've got the paints now, and actually it's just a matter of getting this thing off the wall and dealing with that probably I'll maybe do it in August.
There you go.
And it's not going to be a one-day job, which I don't really like, because when I do art, I like to finish it in one day, smaller pieces. But this is a much larger piece. It's probably 5 foot by 4 foot, and I will have to spend a few days, which I won't like, but I'll have to spend a few days working on it.
Well, actually, this should be perfect for that.
That's what,
Because, and it's not a blank. It's not a blank canvas. You're redoing.
I'm redoing
an existing canvas, which is perfect.
Yeah.
Mercury retrograde over Venus.
So and I can tinker and with smaller and smaller paintbrushes.
And you might actually have the the desire to meticulously go into that, whereas in the past you would have been like, ugh, yeah, can't be bothered.
Yeah, it's a more than a one day's job. That's why I don't want to tackle it, because I like to have little chunky jobs. So anyway, that's just. Yeah, I would imagine that would be how that would be unfolding. I don't see it as a particularly problem area.
No.
But like yours with the, Mercury's going to do retrograde over your moon. It's not the end of the world. It's just going to be a little bit more communication.
Yeah,
maybe
and it's in the 10th house, so it's, sending out resumes or whatever. Because we need to be ready to move, don't we, at any moment, because you never know what's going to come up, or you might even decide to open your own business or launch it further than you have at the moment. There is some inklings about magazines maybe one day coming through, but we will see what happens with that. Yep.
So then let's just have a quick chat about what we think in general. What could we say to our listeners about this Mercury retrograde?
Well, look at your chart. Think about where you've got Virgo placements between the degrees of 8 and 21 Virgo. And those dates again are August 23rd through September 15th. In the retrograde period, and then a few weeks earlier for the shadow phase. So just to be aware and use these energies for your benefit. That's what we're here for, is to tell you that it's not about, this looming thing is coming and it's going to, be doom and destruction. It's about, here's something to focus on. Here are ways you can reframe and use this energy for good, and just a new way to sort of frame it in your mind and think about a different aspect of your life that might need a little more meticulous focus or attention to detail, or all these little Mercury buzzwords.
That's right. So anyone with planets between 8 and 21 Virgo will get this passing over, and if you don't have planets there, then it probably just pass you by. You can just watch on the sidelines as those around you are fumbling.
Watch the Geminis in your life. They always feel it.
So as I say, it's a great. It's in its own sign. It's the last, I think, retrograde. We've got one just at the very end of the year coming up, but this is the one for August, and this podcast is going out on the Sunday, so it should be next week.
Yeah, and interestingly, since we are talking about the end of August, beginning of September, it's back to school era.
It is.
Week or whatever. So this
It'll
is
be a
obviously...
rush.
Yeah, I mean, so the time to make sure you're signed up for the right whatever. If you're in school, make sure that you have signed up for the financial aid and everything is proper with your paperwork and all that stuff. Those are always important things to manage the details, but just be a little bit more careful about that stuff this time around.
And mums, if you've got kids at school and they're going back and you need pens and papers and erasers and scissors, don't leave this to the last minute. Technically, you really want to get it all in before August the 23rd. Because there'll be a scramble and maybe even a shortage. After August 23rd. So if you're buying back to school stuff, get it all in before August 23, which is when the first station comes. That's a good one.
Practical advice.
Practical advice from us. Yes.
So as a Virgo, I think Mercury retrograde is not to be feared. This is my advice out there to all the Virgos and anyone who feels like, oh no, Mercury retrograde. It is a great opportunity. I don't have Mercury retrograde in my chart, but I obviously have 3 planets, including Mercury in Virgo. And I have always thought of Mercury retrograde as just an opportunity to sort of be more meticulous, but a little bit more focus on the things that are really important that you should kind of be meticulous about already, but we can't always be 100% meticulous about everything all the time. God forbid, we would go insane. It's just, it's an opportunity for everybody to sort of take a step back, pun intended, very much so, and just be a little retrospective, careful about the things that are important and that might impact your daily life and your communication and your movement through the world, all those Mercury things.
That's right. It's I think it's an interesting time. As I say, these things happen 3 times a year. It's not the first time we've had Mercury retrograde, and it certainly will not be the last. But forewarned is forearmed. So basically, if you are a Virgo with those dates, it will affect you more. But as you can see, Arwynne and I have a couple of planets there, but it's really not a big drama coming through. It's just I think the point is that if you know it's coming, you can focus on saying, I can put time aside to focus on this organization of what I want to do, planning out my whatnots, do strategic planning, or reaching out, or whatever it is. And use the energy, because then you're riding the wave of that energy, rather than trying to surf into the shore when the tide's going out.
Or going, oh my God, my computer crashed. What happened? Why is this happening to me? Why? Yeah.
Exactly. So in that way, that's the benefit of astrology, that you are then, you've got a heads up on what's coming. There's a shift in energy. There's a shift in the actual drive of the planet and communication, messages and contacts. So just be aware of that and make the most of it. Don't fear it. So that's what I would say too. I think you've got some great advice there as well.
Thanks.
Okay, well, Arwynne, thanks so much for being here again with us today, and it was great having you here discussing Mercury retrograde.
Thank you, Alison. It's been great to be here.
Thank you. Thanks so much for getting this far through the episode. I just want to take a moment to tell you about the two main options of my astrology services. So the first one is coaching. If you are an aspiring astrologer, and by that I mean someone who's perhaps a hobbyist astrologer, or someone who's learning astrology, or a student, or you've got a few books and you've been doing it for a while, but perhaps you need a little bit of help to bring it all together, then maybe getting some astrological coaching from me would be the answer for you. The astrology coaching I offer is a 1-hour session on Zoom, and it's tailored to answer your particular questions. For example, if you have issues with natal chart readings, we can go there. Or if you're having problems working with your forecasting, we can go there. Or even basic astrology stuff, or even getting yourself organized for your astrology business. The idea is that astrological coaching will answer your particular questions. It's tailored specifically to you and where you are in your astrological journey. And I'm happy to help you out with some guidance about how you can get going, what to focus on, and what to dismiss. So that would be the astrological coaching for people trying to learn astrology. The second astrological service I offer is consultations. So this is for someone who perhaps doesn't know anything about astrology, but they just want to have their chart read or get their chart done. Call it what you will. So once more, this is a 1-hour consultation over Zoom. I will interpret your chart, tell you about the main features, tell you about where the energy is flowing, and all the rest of what is entailed in a thorough natal chart interpretation. I can also add in some forecasting in there too, bearing in mind we only have 1 hour. So just in summary, I've got coaching for people who want to learn astrology, and I've got consultations for those who want to get an astrology reading done. I'm Alison Price from Starzology.com. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.